Is everybody there? Okay, good. Hi, I'm Craig Garber, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. We have a lot of good information to cover, and I hope you're as excited about it as I am, so let's give in. First of all, the webinar is called How to Get More New Customers, Clients, or Patients Than Your Business Can Practically Handle. And to do that, I'm going to show you how to double your qualified leads and conversions in 7 days or less using an unusual marketing system I've developed and perfected over the years. I'm the author of How to Make Maximum Money with Minimum Customers, and since March of 2000, I've been helping entrepreneurs and business owners do two things: attracting more qualified leads and increasing net profits and net cash flow by increasing the value of your average customer or client. And I'll talk a little bit more about my background in just a moment, but first, let me tell you what we'll be covering on the webinar today. Now, you probably know there's only 3 ways to make more money in business. You can either raise your prices, you could increase your average transaction size by getting people to buy more goods and services from you each time they do buy, or you can get more new customers, clients, or patients. Now, it's been my experience in working with over 300 clients in more than 101 different industries all over the world that this last one, getting more new customers and getting more new qualified leads, that's really the biggest challenge of all these things for most entrepreneurs. So one thing I want you to keep in mind is, however, if you're struggling with generating leads, even if you've been in business for a while, and believe me, I know how frustrating it is, I want you to know you're not alone and it's definitely not your fault. The problem is, most business owners just haven't been trained in how to attract new business. You've been trained and your skill set is in delivering whatever goods and services you provide, not in generating leads, which is why most business owners consistently say this is their number one problem. But don't worry, because on this webinar, I'm going to show you how to create a lead generation system that's effective and unique for your particular business, runs independently of you, and attracts qualified leads to you in a predictable and reliable manner. And by the way, the number 2 problem people have is conversions, meaning converting your leads into paying customers. So we'll also talk about how you can get better at both attracting qualified leads and at converting them into high-paying repeat customers, and much faster than it's happening now for you. Now, I'm going to show you how to do this using a unique system I developed and use with literally hundreds of clients. And it's this system that allows you to get more new clients than your business can handle. I know that might sound far-fetched, but at one point in time, back in early 2000, when I first got into direct response marketing, I thought that was unbelievable as well. And for myself, I saw it with my own eyes happen. And obviously since then, I've seen it happen with hundreds of clients. And by the way, before I forget, you should have received your special report called The 7 Biggest Marketing Mistakes Entrepreneurs Make and How to Avoid Them. You should have gotten that in your registration email. But if you didn't get a chance to download it, it's over there on the right-hand side of your screen, so feel free to download it now. And I'm not sure if you've seen the small gray box on the right-hand corner over the last couple of pages, but if you listen all the way through the end of this webinar, I'm also going to give you away another free bonus. It's an audio program that's for sale on my website, and it contains 10 live interviews I gave. Now, there's close to 11 hours of money-making marketing strategies on it that you could start digging into right away and using and profiting from. So if you like the strategies you hear on this call, you'll get a lot of good money-making ideas out of this bonus, so stick around. Now, let me quickly tell you a little bit about myself. Some of you on this webinar may know me already. Maybe you've either read my book or perhaps you've been on my website for a while. So then, on the personal side, I actually grew up in the Bronx in New York City. That's me in front of my Bronx apartment building in the late 1960s sometime. And I just want you to know, if you've ever had this impression of the Bronx that it's like a rough place because there's a lot of violence there and a lot of low-income housing and lots of angry, violent, pissed off people, or anything else you might have seen on television, I just want to tell you that you're 100% accurate in that assessment. It's pretty much exactly like that, especially during the period of time I was growing up during the 1970s. And New York City in general was pretty much like the wild, wild west. They had a lot of problems. So you're right. Now, professionally, I actually started my career out of college working as a certified public accountant. And after I graduated college, I spent 3 years working in the audit department of Arthur Young, which then became Ernst & Young. And probably, like most of the people listening to this, I bet, I realized early on that the corporate world definitely wasn't for me at all. But I do have to say, I'm glad I chose accounting as a profession, because that background has helped me out a lot throughout my entire career in being able to understand clients' business in general, and money in general. Over time, I got into sales and I eventually got into financial planning, and I ran my own practice, which is where you see me sitting at the desk in that photo. In my financial planning practice, I work with business owners doing estate tax planning, and I also managed high net worth portfolios. I also sold a fair amount of life insurance, disability, and long-term care insurance, and other financial products. Now, back in 2000, right before the stock market tanked, I got into direct response marketing, and this was really the game changer for me. The big aha moment for me came when I discovered that you could actually attract leads and attract new business, as opposed to the only thing I knew at the time, which was basically chasing people down and trying to convince them to working with you. Before this, I was just like most business owners. I really didn't understand much about effective marketing or how to get steady business flow. I'd listen to the ad reps just like everybody else did. I'd run these ads over and over again, expecting something to happen, and nothing ever happened. But I've learned since then that running bad ads over and over again and expecting something good to come out of them, it's like wearing cheap cologne over and over again and expecting it to start smelling good. It's just not possible. But once you do learn how to create an effective lead generation process, I can tell you from experience as both a business owner and as someone who's helped hundreds of clients do this, your entire life literally changes. Today, my wife and I live just outside of Tampa, Florida, in a small former citrus town called Lutz. We've been together over 21 years, and one of the things I like most about what I do is the flexibility I have with my schedule, simply because I have lead flow. And I need flexibility because, we have a pretty good sized family. Here we are with our 2 sons and our daughter vacationing out at Pike's Place in Seattle. It was really beautiful. The whole part of the country was absolutely breathtaking. Today, I spend most of my time consulting with clients, helping them generate leads and put together overall marketing systems and strategies. And I'm also involved in a couple of other niche businesses, one in the consumer marketplace and one in real estate. I also publish marketing programs and a monthly offline newsletter that you see right there, and that's called Seductive Selling. And we've been publishing that monthly since April of 2006, and at last count, we have readers in over 15 countries worldwide. Lastly, I also work with a handful of copywriting clients every year as well, and for these folks, I create the advertising and the marketing campaigns for them, both online and offline. So let me give you a few examples of some of the projects I've worked on. This is a consulting client of mine, is a young guy named Timu Kanunen, only 23 years old. Now, he was making an average of $2,000 to $3,000 per client and not picking them up very consistently. I work with Timu, and you can see he had a consulting practice. He did web development, marketing, some lead generations or search engine optimization. And before we started working together, he was billing an average of $2,000 to $3,000 per client. Afterwards, we created a lead generation process for him, and he was able to charge $12,000 per client. So all he did was pretty much just take what I told him and implement it. And this is the same system I'm going to show you on this call. And, my hat's off to any young guy, 23 years old, that could do something like that. I certainly didn't have the capacity to do something like that when I was 23, that's for sure. Another client I've worked with is a guy named Dave Lowry. He's a property manager in Tampa. Prior to working with me, David had 180 units under management. Now, 1 year after he started working with me, he went from 180 units to 635 units. In other words, in 1 year, he added 455 units after averaging 90 a year prior to that for the 2 years prior. And once at the end of that, he was collecting over $500,000 a month in rents. Mike Midget, he's out of St. Louis. And Mike was a pretty savvy guy to begin with respect to marketing. He's in financial services, experienced business owner, experienced marketer. And he had a bit of a lead generation bottleneck. And he hired me to help him create a stronger and a more systematic lead generation system. So I developed the strategy and I wrote the copy for him, and here's what happened. He increased the amount of leads he was getting by 51%. And what happens is, because these leads are more qualified leads, his net cash flow went up by 60%. Okay? So what I hope you're starting to realize is just how much of a financial impact having an effective lead generation system means to you. Now, the other thing I teach is how to write persuasive sales copy. And when your sales copy is compelling, here's the kind of results you can get. For example, I mentioned I'm in a consumer products business right now. It's a very, very competitive industry, and the average sale in this particular marketplace is between $130 and $140. Our average sale has consistently been $217, which is 67% higher than industry standards. Direct mail, which is still very popular, and plenty of my clients do it. If you know anything about direct mail, then you know typical response rates are 1%. In fact, plenty of catalog and direct mail companies have had very long and very successful lives running at 1 to 2% response rates for years and years and years. Well, I wrote a lead generation direct mail piece to drive people to a seminar for a client of mine, and that piece generated a 47.1% response rate on the first mailer. In fact, the client couldn't even mail the second and third mailers because he didn't have the capacity for it on the particular teleseminar telephone service he was using. Now, this is his first teleseminar he ever gave. I coached him on what to do and how to structure it, and he then sold $151,000 worth of programs on the phone that night. Okay? Needless to say, he was ecstatic with those results, and I was happy for him as well. I mentioned earlier that with the system I use, leads come to you instead of the other way around, where you're chasing people down trying to convince them to work with you. Now, what's important about this is that it dramatically changes your positioning in your relationship with your clients, as well as the overall dynamics of how your clients look at you. In other words, when people come to you, instead of you chasing them down, you have a lot more leverage and a lot more control over that relationship. You don't have to do things like discount your prices because you need the money or because your client can sense how desperate you are. In fact, you're typically the highest price vendor in your marketplace because you've positioned yourself so uniquely. And when you're unique, basically, since no one can compete with you, that's what allows you to charge more. You don't have to jump when your clients say jump. You don't have to say oh hi when they say jump. You just do your own thing. Why? Because they sought you out. They came after you, not the other way around. You didn't chase them down. So you have the prerogative to do whatever you want. And the nice thing is, these techniques we're about to cover, they work both online and offline. Okay? So with that said, pay close attention because we're about to get started. I want to talk to you about how to attract unlimited numbers of qualified leads. Now, what I typically see is most people aren't getting either enough leads or else a lot of the leads you're getting just aren't qualified. Like you attract a lot of people who are shopping around for low prices or just tire kickers or looky-loos, right? But no matter what the reason is, the bottom line is if you're like most people, you're probably wasting your time with too many unqualified prospects. And just to be clear, qualified means they could afford to pay you and they're ready to buy now. Now, this may sound silly what I'm about to tell you, but I want you to think it through and digest it bite by bite. One of the reasons why you're not attracting the right people is because you're not putting out the right messages to attract those people in the first place. So what I've seen, what typically happens is most business owners are afraid of losing people when they're running ads and marketing. So they don't ask for specific buyers in their marketing, thinking, oh my God, I don't want to lose somebody. There may be somebody that's remotely interested and if I cut them out, I'll lose them. Well, the problem with this is what you're saying in your marketing dictates 100% who responds to it. In other words, if you're asking for specific buyers, qualified buyers, I mean qualified meaning whatever it means for you, you'll get them. And if you're not asking for these specific types of buyers, you won't get them either. Okay? So I'm gonna give you an example of this that's outside of the business realm because it may be a little easier to understand. Okay, and I'm going to use a fishing analogy because I do a lot of bass fishing out here on my lake. Now, some people who don't know any better, they come out to my lake and they grab a slice of good old Wonder Bread and they roll it up into a ball. They put it on the end of their hook. They toss the line in. And if they're lucky, they're going to catch one of these little fish. They're called brim. Up north, you might know them as sunfish. They look similar. Okay. Now, other people that know how to fish this lake, they'll come out here and they'll grab one of those Senkos. It's called a Senko lure, S-E-N-K-O. And they will feed it through the hook just like that. And they'll throw that hook out and they'll catch one of these trophy largemouth bass. okay? And my point is, marketing is a lot like fishing in the sense that the types of leads you're going to attract are 100% dependent on the kind of bait you put out. And the problem is most people simply don't know the most effective bait to use to catch the particular fish they want to catch, okay? And that's why they can't ever seem to land these big trophy largemouth bass, or in business, the good clients. Or you'll catch them, but only once in a blue moon instead of catching them routinely, okay? So let's talk about how to catch these big fish right now. Now, I want you to write this down. The best way of generating leads is something called two-step lead generation, okay? Now, this process, or something like it, has been around since the mid to late 1800s. At least that's how far back I've seen it in old magazines and newspapers that I have, okay? And we're going to take a look at an example of this, all right? Now, this is a two-step process that's selling the Charles Atlas Dynamic Tension Bodybuilding course. Now, you notice in the ad, it doesn't say anything about Charles Atlas. Oh, it does say dynamic tension. It doesn't say anything about selling anything, okay? And if you're a baby boomer, I'm sure you recognize this ad because it was in like every comic book and magazine that we read when we were kids. And this is a small ad. It was probably a sixth of a page, or maybe, yeah, it was a sixth of a page. But if you remember, they ran 1 and 2 full page ads of this, and they had headlines typically like "The insult that made a man out of Mac," and it was this bully kicking sand on Mac at the beach. Then he goes and orders this program, and then he comes back, and sometime later the bully kicks sand in him, and then Mac hands it to him, and because he's a changed person, because he has more confidence and more physical, he's built better and all that kind of good stuff, in better shape. So here's what I want you to notice about this: the actual ad itself, that's step 1 in the two-step lead generation process. It's a very simple ad. It says dynamic tension starts giving you results, and you could feel, and your friends will notice. Big useful muscles, gain weight if needed. Lose your pot belly. Send name and address for 32-page book free. And it's got the address where you got to write to get the free booklet. I'm looking at that address now. It's actually 3 or 4 blocks away from where I went to college. I never realized that. Anyway, so the ad itself is step 1 of the process, but the second step is that free booklet, the 32-page booklet they send you. Now, here's what's going to be in this booklet. The booklet's going to contain a ton of really good information about getting in shape, losing body fat, and gaining muscle. And basically, it's going to make you a better consumer for the product that you're buying, okay? Then inside, at the end of the 32-page book, there's going to be an offer for you to order the Charles Atlas Dynamic Tension Program. And it's probably going to say something like this: if you like the information in this report, and if you'd like to use this process to get in shape and build more muscle than you ever wanted and lose more weight than you ever imagined, and if you want to do this once and for all, then order the Charles Atlas Dynamic Tension System now. Now, what I want you to realize about this, I want you to recognize actually, is at this point, ordering this program is a very natural thing to do for the person that sent away for this booklet and then read the information, okay? So I want you to understand what this two-step process involves in general. Step away from this particular ad, although it's the same thing, but I want you to see what's going on. Sorry, I got to drink a lot of water. I get dry when I speak. Basically, what's going on here is someone's asking for your contact information. Like in this case, they're getting name, address, and name and mailing address. Online, they'd be getting a name and an email. In exchange for this contact information, they're offering you some kind of consumer information that's going to make you a more educated buyer. So basically, with this process, instead of you just running an ad and asking someone if they want to buy something, and let's face it, most of the time they don't want to buy. In this case, you're giving them something of value to your customers. You're helping solve a problem that they have. I want to say that again. You're helping solve a problem that they have. And the bigger the problem that they have, the better this method is going to work for you. And by the way, in case you don't know this, the best salespeople aren't really salespeople at all. They're just really good problem solvers and good listeners. And that fits in perfectly with this two-step approach. Because if you read through this 32-page booklet, it means you're interested in the information and you want to experience the benefits or the results that this kind of information is ultimately going to give you. And if you think about it, it's really much more of an effective way of selling for many reasons. For starters, you've now developed an actual relationship with the Charles Atlas company, especially when you compare it to the conventional way of selling, which is basically, you run an ad that says some version of, hey, I'm selling this product or service and I hope you might want to buy it. Well, there's no relationship there. You've actually got a relationship going with these folks now. When you just put an ad there and hope it works, I have this saying, hope is not a very good business strategy. Well, you don't have to hope anything with this process, okay? Now, how effective is this strategy? Well, I'll show you some examples, but I've gone through some examples already, and we'll show you some more. But using this strategy, Atlas sold millions and millions of dollars worth of these programs, and this was back in the 1960s. And there's absolutely no way they would have sold anything close to this just running an ad that said, hey, here's a fitness program for sale. Okay, never happened. In fact, when they switched over to this method and they came up with the proprietary name for their bodybuilding system, switching it over to dynamic tension, that's when their business exploded. Prior to this, they were actually on the verge of bankruptcy. And you could look this up online and Google, and there's actually a biography on Biography Channel about Charles Atlas. Okay. Now, there's other things you can use for your two-step customer engagement device besides a free report, although there's nothing wrong with a free report. For example, again, use a free report, free booklet, an official guide, a guidebook. You could do a teleseminar. You could do a recorded message. So like call this recorded message to find out more details. Okay. You could offer an audio CD or an audio recording online. You could offer a DVD or some kind of online video sequence. If you're only online, you can offer an e-zine or a workshop or some sort of webinars or an e-course. There's really no limits here. Outside of what you need to keep in mind, whatever you're using should be able to do all the selling for you. So you just have to consider what the best media is to explain the kind of work that you do. Okay. Then this becomes the automated sales process we talked about. This is the secret formula to generating all these leads. Why? Again, because you're not selling anything. You're offering your buyers solutions to problems as opposed to simply trying to sell them something like everyone else is doing. And everybody wants solutions to their problems. I don't need to convince you on that, but very few people want to be convinced or talked into buying something. Okay. Now, inside this booklet or whatever two-step engagement device you're using, this is where you want to define your marketplace positioning and your differential, which is also called your unique selling proposition. And we'll talk about this in a minute because this is the key to conversions. Now, it's also in this report. I'll keep referring to it as a report, but you could use whatever you want as we've gone through. In this report, that's also where you want to establish those boundaries and set expectations. In other words, setting expectations and defining what you do and who you want to do it for. And therefore, it also defines what kind of buyers you want to work with and which ones you don't want to work with. As a result, this two-step process allows you to focus your time and energy on working only with qualified leads. Think of it like, when you put foods through a strainer. When you put something through a strainer, it's pure. It comes out pure on the other side. And really, this process is no different in that when you put your prospects through the two-step process, pure or higher qualified leads wind up coming out the other side as well. Now, there's 4 situations when you must use two-step lead generation. So let me go through these with you. The first is when you're selling something expensive. The second is when you are selling something with a long sales cycle. For example, financial services, life insurance, home remodeling. Third is when you're selling something that's complicated or difficult to understand. For example, most legal services, consulting services, most types of insurance, cosmetic surgery, and other medical problems. Or when you're working in an unscrupulous industry, which is like almost everything nowadays. Okay? So why do you have to use two-step in those situations? First of all, because it makes you completely different from your competition. Okay? Simply because you're helping someone solve problems instead of just trying to sell them something like everyone else out there, like all your competition's trying to do. This alone makes you uniquely different, just like this cute little pink elephant there. All right. Now, this process is just more effective and easier because it eliminates all the convincing, okay? See, one thing you gotta understand is if they go through your step 2 engagement device and they still want to buy, you know they're qualified. They've self-qualified. They've qualified themselves by continuing to go through the funnel. You told them what you do, what you offer, what the industry is like, who you want to work for, and they're still there. So when they're showing up to you with you to buy, when they're contacting you, you don't have to convince them or sell them on doing anything because they've already sold themselves. So it eliminates this convincing nonsense. It also positions you as a problem-solving authority figure instead of, again, another salesperson. And there's an old saying that I have, and you want to keep this in mind when it comes to selling. It goes like this. It says, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And when it comes to sales, that has never been more true than ever. And this 2-step process allows you to show them how much you care. It's really important, especially if you need to develop trust and rapport with your buyers. So what I want to do is pause here for just a minute so I can take some questions. We've got a bunch of questions sent in on through the chat. So let me deal with a few of them now. And I don't know if I said this earlier, but please ask me questions. This stuff is new for a lot of people and it's a lot of moving parts. So feel free to ask as many questions as you need to. If I don't get to any of your questions on the call, and I won't get to all of them, I will personally respond to you by email after the program, okay? So let me take a look and see what we have here. Craig, my business is in, this is a good one. Yeah, Craig, my business is in more than one of these 4 categories you talked about. What does that mean? Okay, so this person's probably talking about those 4 situations when you have to use 2-step lead generation. And just to review, that's selling something expensive, selling something with a long sales cycle, selling something that's complicated to understand, or if you're in an unscrupulous industry. So this person's in more than one of these categories. What does that mean? What you're going to find is typically you're not going to just be in one category. You're generally going to find yourself in more than one of these categories, and often you're going to be in all 4 of them. So that's perfectly normal. Obviously, the more categories you find yourself in, the more compelling reason you have to be using this 2-step lead generation process. Okay, so don't worry about that. It's totally normal. Take another question. How long are the free reports? How long are the free reports, or how long does this free information have to be? Okay, that's a good question, and it's actually a question that's been around forever, and it really has to do with, how long a sales letter should be and how much you should or should not write. And I could probably spend 90 minutes on this topic alone because it's so involved, but let me say this. Don't focus on length so much. Instead, I want you to focus on content, all right? You want to write or give them as much information as you need to solve the particular problem your buyers are having and to tie it into the particular goods and services you're selling. So say as much as you need to say to solve their problems, and then make them an outstanding offer, and then adios. That's it. Craig, how would you know what to say in your free step 2 giveaway? Okay. Think about it this way. I want you to think about the biggest pain points your clients are having, or the things that stress them out the most or keep them up at night. Okay? So for instance, let's talk about a subject that is incredibly stressful. Let's say you're a divorce lawyer. You'd want to include information in your free report or your free giveaway, probably about things like minimizing legal fees, how you do that, how to make sure you have as much time with the kids as possible after the divorce or during the divorce, how to avoid paying your spouse as much money as possible. And of course, if you tend to represent, stay-at-home moms of affluent husbands, you want to talk about how to get as much money out of your spouse or how to collect as much money as possible. And, probably something like how to avoid a lengthy divorce process so you can get back on with your life as quickly as possible. Along those lines, tips like that. In other words, you want to think about what's bothering your client. What's stopping them from moving forward? What are their concerns? What are they worried about? And you want to address each one of these things, or the most important ones, in this step 2 giveaway. Then you want to be transparent about letting your buyers know how you address each one of these problems. So for each one of the things you discuss, let's say you're talking about minimizing legal fees, you might say something like, well, at XYZ law firm, we keep your fees low by doing the following things. We try to have as many hearings in one session as possible. We don't start things egregiously. We try to mediate as much as possible, and our mediators give us a special discounted rate. Whatever these issues are, you need to discuss and address how your firm handles them, because you can't open a door of an issue and then leave them hanging with an open loop sort of, but that's the whole purpose of these free reports, or your free engagement device, a free step 2 giveaway, because that takes away any anxiety your buyers have, and it makes them feel good about working with you. And that's all this is really about. It's about letting your buyers know what's in it for them and how you make their lives easier. Okay? It's another really good question. We need to move on now, so let's do that. And again, any questions I don't get to answer on the webinar, I'll personally email you after the webinar and address them. Okay, so let's talk about the other, there goes that little elephant again. Let's talk about the other big problem people have, and that's conversions. And basically, lack of conversions directly related to not having a differential. And let me explain what that means. If you look at the competition in your marketplace, right, and you look at all their brochures, mailers, websites, or ads, you're going to notice they're all pretty much saying very slightly different versions of the same thing, right? So like all the realtors will say, let us sell your home. We sold X number of homes like this last year. Financial planners all say some version of, we'll help you with your retirement planning or your insurance or your investments. And dermatologists and plastic surgeons say some version of, they have a before and after photo, then they give you a list of all the procedures they perform. Okay. In fact, most ads just look like big business cards. They all look like some version of this. Now, obviously, this is simplified because online websites each have different styles and colors, and you try to put your own twist on it. But what I'm referring to are the actual messages that you're putting out there. Okay. And my point is, basically in every business, everyone's saying very slightly modified versions of the same exact thing. In fact, let me tell you an interesting story about this. A while ago, I was invited to speak about marketing at a trade show out in California for the treatment center industry, addiction and rehab. And while I was walking around the show, I picked up a bunch of brochures from, all the different companies that were exhibiting there at the tables. And it was astounding that they all said the same thing. You had one, it was a blue brochure, and they had a photo out in Arizona riding horses. Another one was a white brochure, and the photo was in Malibu with the ocean as a background. Then the other one was yellow, and it had a sunshine and a picnic table, and everybody was laughing around the table. And that one was picture was taken in New Mexico. And on each one of these brochures, it basically said some version of this: experience a stress-free recovery while relaxing in our blank. And all you had to do was fill in the blank. And one of them, it was the ranch in the hills, and the other one, it was the house on the ocean side, and the last one, it was the cabin in the desert. And so what I want you to realize is this situation creates a huge problem for you and for your buyers. Because when everybody's saying the same thing, your clients get confused, and they're confused because they can't spot your differential. There's no way you have given them no way to decide who they should work with, because you're all saying the same thing, and nothing about anyone is particularly different. And the problem is when you're no different from anyone else and you're not answering the number one question that they're asking themselves, which is, why should I do business with you instead of someone else? When you're not answering that question, it causes chaos, okay? Now, even though they're unlikely to ask you this question outright, everybody wants to know why they should do business with you instead of with someone else. And the thing is, deep down inside, every buyer has to have some rationale for working with you and for giving you money before they buy. They have to have this question answered. And like I said, few buyers will ask you this question directly, but without a compelling answer, without giving them this answer, even if they're not asking the question, most buyers are not going to move forward. And this becomes even more important when you're selling higher priced goods and services or personal services, or like when your role as a problem solver, which is like most consultants and most professional industries, becomes even more important. So it's your job to explain this differential in your marketing. In fact, today, answering this question is more important than ever because the choices people have are virtually endless thanks to the internet. You know, in the old days, it was like, you know, you or the guy 3 blocks away in your town, right? Now you're not competing against the people in your neighborhood. You're not even competing against the people in your city, or you're not even competing against the people in your state or even your own country anymore. You're competing against vendors all over the world, and they all want to, you know, the slice of the same pie that you're eating. Okay? So this having a differential is critical. Now, this differential, and it's typically 1 or 2 things that you have that make you unique, it's called a USP, or unique selling proposition. And having a USP is critical to your success if you want to do more than just survive and get by. Okay? And here's why. See, when you make the mistake of not having a differential and not setting yourself apart or not being unique, you give your buyers no choice but to ignore you. Okay? So let me ask you this. What sets you apart from your competition? And why should your prospects give you their money and not your competition? What's unique about your business? For example, is it how you present things? Is it quality? Is it your strength? If it is, you've got to be specific about it. You know, as we said a minute ago, just telling someone they can relax and experience a stress-free recovery in your oceanside location, it's not good enough because everyone's saying the same thing. You also can't say you've been in business for 25 years and expect that to have an impact. Maybe back in the 40s or 50s, that was a, compelling argument. But today, everybody knows the amount of time you've been doing something and your level of competence at it are mutually exclusive. They don't have anything to do with one another, okay? So if you're using longevity as your USP, it's just not good enough. Same thing if you tell somebody, we give the best service or we give really personal service. That's so vague, it basically means nothing. What does the best mean? What does really personal even mean? It means nothing, and that's why people aren't going to respond to this, okay? Descriptions like that are way too general, and therefore they're absolutely meaningless and useless. You want your USP to be unique, and you want it to deliver specific, tangible benefits that are compelling enough to get clients to feel safe and confident about hiring you. Okay? And unless your USP is strong, specific, and emotionally compelling, that's the only way any client is going to be able to rationalize themselves why they should work with you over someone else. In fact, the truth is, without a meaningful USP, something even worse happens. See, when you have nothing specific to talk about and nothing specific that makes you different, you're giving your buyers no other choice but to base their decision to use you solely on price, okay? Which is why some people constantly find themselves having to negotiate their prices. They haven't justified, they haven't given a tangible, specific, emotionally compelling difference to separate themselves from the rest of the pack. And then even if you are willing to negotiate, which I hope you're not willing to do, even this works against you. Because if all you're competing on is price, as soon as someone else charges a few pennies less, your customer is going to leave you to save even more money, okay? Instead, what you want to do is you want to have such a strong USP, it allows you to charge much higher prices than anyone else. And we're going to look at a couple of examples. Now, there's lots of different ways to come up with a unique selling proposition, and much of this depends on who your customers, clients, or patients are, the problems that your business or your service solves for these folks, the specific reasons why they buy from you, the claims that the rest of your marketplace is making, the process you use to do whatever it is you're doing or making or providing, and the specific niche you operate in. Okay, so let me give you a couple examples of how a USP can help you. First, let's take a look at a very ordinary consumer product like vitamins and supplements, okay? Remember, the question you want to ask yourself when coming up with a USP is, how can I be different? Or how can I appear to be different? Now, in this case, with vitamins and supplements, here's a few different ways you could do it by showing how the particular supplement you're selling maybe has an extra ingredient that does something that other similar products don't have. And this is a very common one. Or maybe you're using a different delivery mechanism. So you're using pills and the other guy's got gel caps, or you're using, the other guy's got a liquid and you're using one of those tongue strip patches that you put on your tongue and it dissolves. And then you just explain why this delivery mechanism is better and you're good to go. Another good USP, ironically, is often letting people know what your product or service doesn't do. For example, with a vitamin or supplement, maybe your ingredients don't increase your heartbeat. They don't make you drowsy. They don't make you feel full, okay? So these are very valid, very powerful differentials. Now, please, I want you to keep this in mind. You may be describing a differential that also exists in some of your products, your competitors' products as well. But the key here is, whether any of your competitors are promoting this differential or not. And I'll show you an example of this in a minute. All right. So I want you to keep in mind, you're creating a perceived differential, not always an actual differential. Okay. Let's take a look at another example. Now, I mentioned one of my clients earlier, David Lowery. He's the guy, he's in the residential property management business, and he's the guy who more than tripled his business in the first year we worked together. So what he does specifically is he manages single-family homes for real estate investors. So he'll rent these homes out, he'll collect the rents, he finds the tenants, manages the tenants, and he's also responsible for things like repairs and for running day-to-day operations for property owners. And if you've ever invested in property, then you know finding qualified tenants and finding them quickly is typically a really huge hassle. And it's also a costly problem because when your property is not being rented out, then you're not making any rental income. Yet at the same time, you still have to make your mortgage payments on the property if you have a mortgage, and you still have to pay out any expenses and any upkeep on the property. And I can tell you from experience, the longer your property stays vacant, the bigger that monthly nut that you got to pay out seems to get. And frankly, just losing 2 or 3 months of rent can sometimes bring your entire annual ROI, return on investment, down to zero. So it's really important you get tenants in there, good tenants, qualified tenants, you get them in there quickly. Anyway, we identified this as the biggest problem or frustration for David's buyers, and I worked with David to come up with an effective USP, and here it is. It's, I guarantee to rent your property in 60 days or less, or I'll pay you 1 month's rent and manage your property for free for 3 months. Okay? And there's another system we developed that allows him to find these qualified buyers so quickly. Now, this is a pretty compelling USP, especially when you compare it to the ocean of other property managers who have nothing. They absolutely have nothing to say. They say, we take this % every month and we find a tenant and that's it. This is really compelling. And if you're a property owner, you're going to jump on this thing and say, hey, this guy's going to guarantee my vacant property now. And most of the time when people get property managers, they're not getting them on day one that they just got the property. So that property's already been sitting there vacant for maybe months and months, maybe years in some situations, because property managers are really they're not very good, and you tend to generally have to go through a bunch of them to find a good one. Anyway, so let me tell you what happened to David once he started using this as a USP. His business went from $2 million in revenues to $6 million in revenues in less than a year. Now I'm going to read you a copy of the actual email David sent me, and I'm going to read it to you because it's one of the nicest and most rewarding messages I've ever received. And it makes me feel really happy and proud to work with a guy like this. So here's the email. It says, Craig, from the time I first started in business, it took me 2 agonizing years to acquire 180 units to manage, and that was with a 24-hour nonstop effort. In my 3rd year, that total shot up to 635 units, which is 455 units more. How did this happen? I began working with you and started following the strategies you recommend. Today, we're bringing in over $510,000 in collectible rents monthly versus 0 3 years ago. It was really nice when I got that. Now, I want you to fast forward the clock because this is a couple of years ago now to today. Right now, David and his partner are now collecting well over $1 million a month in rents. He's also started 4 new companies, all related companies, which bring him in even more money, and they now have 55 employees. And this all started, every one of these companies he starts, he uses the same fundamentals of this process that I'm showing you here and that I worked out with him. So what I want you to keep in mind here is that property management is not what you'd call an exciting or sexy business by a long shot, but that doesn't matter. In fact, frankly, the more boring your industry is, the easier it is for this kind of a marketing system to have a bigger impact. In fact, each one of, like I said, David's companies started and grew just by implementing a similar version of this same system. Now, my own USP, I focus on specific performance areas. So where most people say they're marketing consultants or they're copywriters, right? Because they're afraid to miss out on any business that may fall somewhere into the copywriter or the marketing consultant area. I go the other way. I'm pretty specific about what I do. I do two things. I show you how to attract a reliable, steady stream of pre-qualified leads who are ready to do business with you now. And I help increase your net profits and your net cash flow by increasing the value of your clients, often dramatically. And I do this by developing unique lead generation systems and by using compelling sales messages that push your customers' emotional buy buttons. So in my situation, my USP, rather than telling everybody I'm a jack of all trades, I focus on two niche areas: leads, better quality leads, and customer values. And you can do the same thing in your business, okay? Focusing on specializations within your performance capacity is another solid way to create a differential for yourself, okay? So let's take a few questions on this section about USPs, because we're getting a bunch of them in. This picture, by the way, I took this out back behind my house one night when the sun was setting. We live on a lake here just outside of Tampa. Like I said, it's really pretty. And when you go from the Bronx to something like this, you appreciate it about 100 times more than what the average person who grows up down here appreciates it. Okay, so this is how do you come up with a USP? Is there a formula? Okay, it's actually fairly involved. There's like 9 general categories or themes you could build your USP around. We went through a few of them on the webinar today. We just went through guarantees, niching within an industry, and what else was, what your product does or doesn't do that other products do or don't do. Okay, so there's 9 general categories or themes you could build your USP around. And I have like a 25 or 30 specific line item questions I go through that will then help me develop and build that effective USP. Yet, I just want you to know at the same time, in many situations, the answer is very simple and it's right in front of you. You just got to dig for it. So I mentioned this earlier about not necessarily needing a differential. You just need an actual differential. You just need a perceived differential. So let me talk to you about this. In the early 1920s, there was a brilliant marketing guy named Claude C. Hopkins. And Hopkins was hired by Schlitz Beer to help improve their position in the marketplace. They were 5th in the marketplace, but when you're 5th in the consumer products in beer, you're pretty far behind number 1. There's maybe only a little difference between 1 and 2, but between 1 and 5, it's typically massive, So Hopkins toured the Schlitz factory and he saw the exact steps that the brewmasters were taking to brew the beer. And he was fascinated by it. This, of course, is long before the Schlitz malt liquor bull. For example, he found it very interesting that each bottle was sterilized with steam, not once or twice, but 4 times before they fill it up with beer. Or that the water itself came from artisanal wells that were hundreds of years old. So he went to the executives at Schlitz and said, hey, why aren't you telling the public about these things in your marketing? That's what we're going to do. And they were actually outraged. They thought he was like ripping them off. And they said, look, this isn't new. Everybody makes beer this way. And Hopkins turned around and said to them, yes, but nobody talks about this. And the company that talks about it is going to be the one that's going to own the marketplace. So he created a series of ads discussing all these things, and he took Schlitz from 5th in the marketplace to just a hair behind 1st in how long? 9 months. That's it. That's a pretty dramatic swing in 9 months in consumer goods, So my point is, the USP doesn't actually have to be unique. It just has to be perceived to be unique, Okay. And now if you think about it, every beer commercial you see on TV, you look at Budweiser, Samuel Adams, those are the big advertisers. They're all showing you the steam filtering process the steam being pushed through the bottle. So it shows you what an impact that this had on beer advertising. Take another question. Craig, what if you come up with a USP and someone else has the same USP you have? Okay, that's a good question, but this typically doesn't really happen. At least I haven't seen a situation where it happened. The whole point of a USP is to make you unique. So like if lots of other people are saying the same thing or using the same differential, then it's really not a good differential, In fact, if everyone's saying the same thing, it's a great indication of what you shouldn't say or what you shouldn't be using as your USP. And what you have to understand also that this information that I'm sharing with you is known by probably less than 0.5% of all business owners. So you're, for the most part, not going to ever have to worry about stuff like this, okay? Let's take one more question. Craig, does every business need a USP? Let me just say this. If you're in one of those 4 categories we discussed, then chances are pretty good you need a USP. Only with USPs is one more category you have to add in there. A USP is particularly important when you're selling something that's a commodity. See, when you're selling something that's really ordinary, and this can be anything from beer to teeth cleaning to business consulting to vitamins and supplements, it's really important to have a USP because a good USP decommoditizes your product or service, okay? That's why oftentimes a shortcut of way of decommoditizing something is by coming up with a proprietary name for the service, okay, as the USP. So for example, I sell a marketing newsletter called Seductive Selling. If it was called Marketing Information, it probably wouldn't be as appealing. That's just the way life works. I'll tell you another example. There's a cosmetic surgeon. I don't watch a lot of TV, but almost every time I watch it, this guy's running ads. So the ads must be performing really well. There's a cosmetic surgeon here in the Tampa Bay area, and he runs these TV commercials, and he talks about a facelift he gives. Now, it's kind of ironic. First of all, that facelifts today are now commodities. When I was a kid growing up, it would be like, oh my God, she got a facelift. Now it's like, oh, you didn't have a facelift? So this guy's got this unique process called it's something like the fresh facelift. I don't know the exact name, but this proprietary name makes him different, okay? Because when you're offering a proprietary service like that, no one else can offer it, So even if it's similar to what everybody else is doing, right? You've now made it unique. Now, if you're going to want to add something to the process that's uncommon, that actually creates a real differential, but you don't have to, So sometimes the proprietary technique is, coming up with a proprietary name for something. That's the answer to finding a USP, but not always. As you've seen, you could use guarantees. You could focus on 1 or 2 particular niche areas like I do. You could focus on specific customer demographics, like you only work with women over 35, or, you're a trainer and you specialize in working with executives that are overweight or something like that. Like I said, there's like 25 or 30 different angles you can take with respect to forming a USP. But, to answer your question, yes, the most successful clients I've worked with all have an emotionally compelling USP. I do have a special consulting program that revolves around USPs specifically. It's not being offered on this webinar. However, if this is something you're interested in, just get a hold of my assistant, Ann. You could find her contact information on my website at kingofcopy.com/contact, or you'll see it at the end of this presentation. All right, we need to move on. Thanks for sending those questions. Sorry about that. Thanks for sending in your questions. And again, if I don't get to one of them, I'll respond to it personally by email to any unanswered questions that you might have. Now, what I want to do now is show you how to tie this all together and by showing an actual live case study. All right, here's the situation. Got a client, he's a dentist, retiring from practice at a young age, 53. Super successful guy, and what made him successful is he studied intensely customer service from a variety of sources, and he created a unique method of customer service deliberate procedures that allowed him to personally bill over just his personal billings, 1.2 million a year. And he did that for like 6 or 7 years straight. That's on top of what his staff bills, okay? And he's got a staff of dental hygienists and oral surgeons. And just so that you know, this guy only works 37 weeks a year, 37 and a half weeks a year. He vacations like the other 14 and a half weeks all over the world. So this guy's not crushing it. I mean, got a great work ethic, but he didn't make that money by working 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's just quite the opposite. He's just got a very unique service. And he's in an average town. He doesn't work in Beverly Hills. He works in honestly, like a mid-sized town in Australia. Anyway, so he wanted to start a dental consulting practice and to teach his customer service system to other dentists. He only wants high-paying clients, and he initially really doesn't have anything to sell them. So let me go over the highlights of how I solved these problems and how I basically put him in the consulting business almost overnight. So the first thing I did was I created a differential, or, in this case, actually, I probably created 2 of them. So the first thing I did was I came up with a proprietary name for his process. I called it the ultimate patient experience. Okay. He's the only one that could offer the ultimate patient experience. Now, even if someone else is doing the exact same thing he's doing, and I'm sure there's other dental consultants teaching customer service, no one's got the ultimate patient experience, which is, a leg up because people want to sign up for the ultimate patient experience, right? Okay. Now, and again, if you're concerned about something like this, you could always trademark names. Okay, it's very easy to do. The second differential I came up with was, most of the dental consultants out there, they're teaching dentists how to make more money by spending more money on marketing, okay? Or by deploying more financial resources into bigger and better assets in your office, okay? So I realized that he's doing something that's opposite to that. So I took this differential and I wrote a free report for him, and it was called How to Add at Least an Extra $100,000 in Billings to Your Dental Practice Without Spending Even 1 penny more on marketing, extra staff, fancy lasers, or new equipment. So those are his 2 differentials. That he could show you how to make more money without add an extra not just make more money, add an extra $100,000 in billings to dental practice without spending any money on any of those things. And he's going to do it by offering you the ultimate patient experience. He's got really strong, really solid, 2 solid differentials. Now, the next thing we did was I created a 2-step marketing system to generate leads for him. And before I show you what we created, I want to show you some of the conventional marketing in this industry. Because sometimes the biggest hurdle to getting people to use this direct response marketing methods I'm sharing with you is really, getting them to believe that something so unconventional and boring actually works. But the reality is, you've seen all these examples I've given you. It doesn't just work. It works like gangbusters. And I'll show you the results of this campaign so you could decide for yourself. And if you're a bit of a rebel, you'll like this stuff. Now, we talked earlier about using different media, offering you different returns of investment on your marketing dollars. Or maybe we didn't talk about that, but different media will obviously give you a different return on your investment in marketing dollars, So in this particular situation, what my client wanted to do is he said, hey, there's a ton of dental magazines. Let me run a full page ad in one of the dental trade journals. And I said, hey, that's not a bad thing to do, but I got a better way, one that's going to not cost you as much money up front, and it will also deliver much faster results, okay? So I said, let's do an email drop to one of these lists, because everybody, for the most part, sells their lists and rents their lists. That's how they make money in ad revenues, okay? So there's a number of trade magazines in the industry. I helped him select one, and then I helped him negotiate a good rate on his ad drop, which is really good to know, but unfortunately, that's another story for another day. So before I created the piece, the lead generation piece, I just asked them to show me a couple of typical emails they send out that do well. Not so I can copy them, as you can see, but just because I wanted to see what was going on. And I'm glad I did, because now I could share them with you. So here's a conventional marketing campaign that you'll see. And the subject of the email says, Stanley Malamed and Don Cohen preparing for allergic reactions. Download the new guide. Not particularly compelling. And, that's the typical email. That was the email they sent out. That looks like, we all get emails like this all day long. Here's another one. The subject line of this one was 1 wipe, 1 minute, 1 solution. And that's the email. Again, very typical sort of email. Doesn't really tell you much. Doesn't really ask you to do anything. And now here's the subject line we sent out. It says, what the American Dental Association doesn't want you to know. Now, it's very different, as you could see, very compelling, and it generates a ton of curiosity. And I want you to understand that whenever you could generate curiosity, especially when you're dealing with relatively boring subject material, you're well on your way to getting the kind of attention that you want, okay? So this is much stronger than 1 minute, 1 wipe, 1 solution. I'm sure you'll agree. Now, here's the ad I created for them. Again, very different looking. And let me read it to you quickly. Being a dentist isn't easy. You're performing delicate medical procedures with perfect precision inside a space smaller than a baseball for an hourly pay that in many cases is less than what your roofer earns for patching a leak over your kitchen. You buy new equipment and invest in state-of-the-art technology because that's what you're supposed to do. Then you sit there staring at this stuff glistening in your office like a brand new car in the showroom. Only unlike the car that eventually gets sold, you're left thinking, darn, this stuff looks good. I sure wish I could make some money with it. The bottom line is, we've been trained how to be great dentists, not how to run super profitable dental practices. In fact, most of us just look at what the guy across the street is doing and figure, hey, if it's working for him, it'll work for me. The problem is, it's not working for him either. Look, there's only one thing separating dentists like you from those dentists who are consistently bringing home 6 figures a month or more. But this one thing is absolutely critical. You see, the most successful dentists have simply managed to somehow differentiate themselves from their competition. They know if you're no different from anyone else, then you give your patients no other choice but to base their decision to use you solely on price. And as you know, this has no upside. And by the way, I fill cavities better is not a difference any patient is ever going to appreciate. The good news is a free report has just been released which reveals 7 simple practice differentials that are so powerful that will allow you to attract and retain more patients and actually charge much higher prices than your competition. This report, written by dental differential expert Dr. David Moffat, is called How to Add at Least an Extra $100,000 in Billings to Your Dental Practice Without Spending Even 1 penny more on Marketing, Extra Staff, Fancy Lasers, or New Equipment. Inside this free report, you'll discover the secret weapon Dr. Moffat's been using since 1996 that allowed him to personally bill $1.8 million last year, working only 4 days a week for 37 and a half weeks, while vacationing all over the world the other 15 weeks. The good news is all you need is even a halfway decent team, and you can use this same secret weapon in your own practice on page 3. Why patients travel 10 and a half hours by plane to pay Moffat's outrageous prices for dental care. And by the way, it has absolutely nothing to do with his dentistry and everything to do with these 7 simple differentials. And how to consistently increase your prices 10.55% per year on average while retaining 91% of your patients. So if you're sick and tired of drilling all day long and not having anything close to what you deserve to show for it, or if you've ever wondered, what can successful dentists possibly know that I don't, then download your copy of this free report right now at, and it says click here to download this special report now. Now, here, as you can see, there's only 3 little links in the ad that people clicked on to register to sign up for this free report that I wrote. Now, there's a lot of things going on in that ad that make it work so well, and if this were like an ad writing workshop, we could probably spend a couple of hours going over them, but unfortunately we don't have the time for this. But I do want to share with you the performance statistics of the ad so you can see what kind of an impact something like this, a process like this, is going to have on your business. So here's the normal average ad performance for this list. The open rate, meaning how many people actually see the email in their mailbox and open it, is typically almost 12%, 11.84%. The click-through rate on these people is 8.96%. Well, now that means that of the people that open this email, almost 9% of them actually click on the links in the email. Okay, and here's the results of the campaign we ran. Our open rate was 15.4%, which is 30% higher. But the average click-through for these open mails was 21.4%, which is 239% higher. Now, I want you to think about what I said earlier. Remember I told you with one of the clients I work with, his leads went up by 51%, but his cash flow went up by 60%. This is the reason why. Because you're getting more qualified people in there to start with, those people will also make you more money. And here's a perfect example why. Because, you had 30% higher people, but 239% higher opens, okay? But in reality, that last statistic is actually misleading, because it's not really 239% higher. It's a 239% greater return off a response that's actually that 30% higher to start with. So in reality, this kind of two-step process produced a 310% greater response than what everybody else is typically getting, okay? And by the way, this was within 48 hours after the email dropped, okay? And I don't think I need to take a survey amongst everybody listening to ask whether anybody on this webinar would not be happy with a 310% more leads, okay? In fact, I bet my house most people listening to this would be thrilled with a bump in response that's 1/10 this size on all your upcoming lead generation campaign. So I hope these kinds of strategies are important to you, because they're very important to me. And in fact, once you start generating leads the right way, you'll quickly realize that your business is at least twice as profitable as you think. And the strategies we just discussed in this webinar consistently make the difference between just getting by and instead predictably and routinely making a lot of money. Now, as I said earlier, I'm the author of a book called How to Make Maximum Money with Minimum Customers. And on this webinar, I revealed a very small sample of the kinds of high profit margin, money-making secrets and strategies that are in my book. These are the same exact strategies I used to make $578,644 in 1 year with a very small list of customers without spending one thin dime on advertising, almost all at 90% profit, and with only one full-time employee. And because you took the time and effort to participate on this webinar, I'd like to give you the opportunity to get your hands on this book itself, plus 11 free gifts, all part of a special Maximum Money bonus program that's only available through this webinar. And I promise you, the offer I'm about to make you is going to be the most irresistible, 100% risk-free offer you've ever seen. In fact, I'd almost guarantee it's going to be the easiest yes you've ever said to anything you've ever been offered. And here's what's inside the Maximum Money program. First, you'll get my best-selling book, How to Make Maximum Money with Minimum Customers. Inside the book, you'll find dozens of marketing strategies that leverage your time. This way, you only have to do things once, like create the free report once, yet you can get paid for them over and over and over again. And as you've seen from the variety of examples and the case studies we talked about in this webinar, it really doesn't matter what kind of business you have, where it's located, or whether your business is online or offline, or both. These strategies work effectively in all kinds of businesses. And as I said earlier, I've worked with over 300 clients in more than 101 different industries, from car washes to consulting services to information publishing and real estate, and each one of these strategies has been used successfully across the board. On top of this, here are a few other things you can look forward to inside How to Make Maximum Money with Minimum Customers. On page 42, I'm going to show you the single greatest secret weapon for making money in any business. How powerful is this secret? Well, quite simply, it's the best source of ongoing and predictable income, referrals, and repeat business in the world. It has literally never failed to make money for anyone who's ever used it, and it has almost zero downside risk. Sadly, almost no one knows about it. Now, remember we talked earlier about how in business there's only 3 ways to make more money? You could either raise your prices, get more customers, or increase the value of your average transaction size. Well, in the middle of page 164, I'm going to show you a proven strategy that gets up to 98.4% of your customers to spend more money with you every single time they buy. This increases your average transaction size significantly, and the good news is it'll take you less than 15 minutes to implement this strategy. I'm also going to show you how to sell your goods and services online and offline for top dollar and at much higher profit margins than your competition. This is actually much easier to do than you think, and you'll see in chapter 10, which is called How to Become Number One in Your Industry. And if you're interested in writing the kind of sales copy we went over in the case study with the dentist, the one that generated a 310% higher response rate, then you're in luck. Because chapter 23, called How to Write a Sales Letter That Actually Sells, gives you the blueprint to getting buyers lined up and practically begging you to take their money. You're also going to get over 47 pages of winning ads, emails, and sales letters inside the book that you can model. On top of this, each chapter also comes with a quick start money-making action step checklist, which lets you set up most of these strategies in less than 24 hours. Some of them are so easy, you can have them up and running by midnight tonight. Now, I told you this is going to be the most irresistible offer you've ever seen, and here's why. You're getting all these things plus the following bonuses for $24.95. And those include an 80-minute audio CD of an interview I gave live in Washington Square Park in New York City. And for a limited time, you may be able to qualify to have a one-on-one strategy session with me over the phone. Let me explain. If you're like most entrepreneurs, you're probably just one step away from having a big breakthrough, and you don't even know it. But if you qualify for one of these client-getting strategy sessions, I'll help you figure out exactly what you need to get that big breakthrough. You see, the most successful clients I've worked with, they're all able to consistently make a ton of cash using only 3 primary strategies. And 2 of them we discussed on this call. Having a systematic lead generation process that predictably and reliably generates loads of pre-qualified leads, which we discussed. Having a unique differential or selling proposition, which we also discussed. And the third one is having strategic positioning in your marketplace. Now keep in mind, with rare exception, these 3 strategies will always be responsible for the lion's share of your business or for your lack of it. And that's because each one allows you to make the most amount of money in the least amount of time and with the least amount of effort. So the question you want to ask yourself is, are you getting maximum leverage in each one of these 3 areas? If not, we'll fix this on your call. But just to be upfront, the call is free, but you have to apply and qualify for it. And because my schedule is pretty full, I only do 3 or 4 of these client-getting strategy sessions a month. So if this sounds like something that'll help you, you'll get an application and details by email immediately after you order. You'll also get a completely free trial of my Maximum Money Club, where you'll get instant access to my 30-day cash flow surge program, which includes a current edition of the Seductive Selling newsletter. I mentioned this earlier. This is the hard copy offline newsletter I've been publishing monthly since April 2006. It's read in 15 countries worldwide, and you'll get that in your mailbox by U.S. postal mail. Every issue includes loads of marketing examples, new strategies, and ad critiques. And you can even send in one of your own ads, and I'll personally critique it in a future issue of Seductive Selling. Each issue also has a special Q&A section where you can send in questions related to marketing, advertising, copywriting, buyer psychology, you name it, I'll answer it in this section. There's also a section on current business news, marketing trends, and legal issues you need to be aware of, as well as updates on important books, money-making resources, and efficiency tools that increase your profits and improve your productivity. You'll also be able to instantly download the following 12 special reports. Billion-dollar marketing secrets. How to easily sell almost anything. How to sell to men of great wealth and power. How to completely dominate your marketplace. Secrets of highly effective positioning. How to take any weakness or flaw in your product, service, or industry and turn it into a core strength. How to completely eliminate worry forever. And 6 other cutting-edge, exciting reports that are guaranteed to boost your cash flow. But there's still more. You'll also get to participate in the next upcoming Maximum Money Club coaching call for free. This is an open group coaching call and a Q&A session. And don't worry, if you can't make the call, you'll get a special email address to send your questions into so I can answer them on the call. You'll also get a step-by-step video critique of an upsell letter I wrote that consistently converts 10% of all buyers of a small $47 product into a $1,000 full system upsell. And on this video, I'll show you why this works so well and how you can use the same formula in your business. You'll also get a copy of the actual letter itself to use as a template, and you can download it instantly right after you order. Also included are 2 free sales copy and ad marketing critiques. And here's what you'll get to do with these. You can send me in any two of your marketing pieces, and I'll send you back a one-page critique with tips and strategies on how to improve it. This way you can have me review your marketing before you spend money rolling it out unchecked. And by the way, I do these critiques personally. I don't hand them off to somebody else to do. You'll also get 3 one-hour audio interviews to listen to, along with transcripts of the calls. The calls are included here as how to outfox the foxes, seductive copywriting secrets that sell, and how to smell opportunity. And I'll also include a coupon for you to save 50% off any product on our website. And lastly, if you order now from this webinar, we'll even pick up the shipping and handling for you. Now, if you want to stay in the Maximum Money Club, you'll get a brand new issue of Seductive Selling newsletter, and you'll get to participate on the Maximum Money open Q&A calls and a recording of the call every month. Monthly membership is only $49.95 or $59.95 outside of America. If you don't want to participate on the club, simply call our office or email my assistant Ann in the next 30 days. And by the way, the office phone number and her email address is on every single issue of Seductive Selling on the back page, and it's also on the contact page of my website. Just let her know and we'll cancel your membership immediately without any hassles or headaches. I also want you to know that this program doesn't come with a 30-day guarantee. It doesn't come with a 60-day guarantee, and it doesn't even come with a 90-day guarantee. This program comes with a 100% unconditional lifetime guarantee. This way, I want you to be able to order right now with no risk. If you're dissatisfied for any reason, no problem. Simply send the book back anytime for a 100% prompt and courteous refund for life. You get to keep the bonus gifts though either way. So order now because you really have absolutely nothing to lose and truly everything to gain. Like I said earlier, even if you only got 1/10 as much of a bump in response to your marketing, 30% instead of 310%, this program is going to pay for itself 1,000 times over. To get started now, just click on the Get Instant Access button on the right. And just so you know, you could also order the book without the Max Money Club bonuses. But why not get everything? There's absolutely no additional cost, and you have 30 days to look over the material. Now, if you're like most people at this point, you're probably wondering about something. And that one thing you're wondering about is, why are you practically giving this away for so cheap? And it's a good question. There's really 2 straightforward answers of it. Number one, first, the truth is, once people get their hands on my information, they tend to buy a lot more of it and they tend to hire me for consulting projects. This is just my way of introducing myself to you. And second, I'm the kind of guy who prefers making long-term investments in people. And that's both in my business life and in my personal life, rather than trying to hit people up for fast cash or quick favors. That's just not my nature. You know, look, most entrepreneurs aren't making the kind of money they deserve, not because of any lack of effort. And if you think about what's missing in your business, you'll probably agree with me that working hard isn't the problem. In fact, most business owners I know are workaholics, okay? The problem is not having enough high-paying, highly qualified leads to speak with in the first place, or not being able to charge them enough money, or not converting enough of them from prospects into high-paying repeat business clients. So if you've ever sensed you'd really be onto something big if you only knew how to consistently attract the kinds of leads you want and how to repel the ones you don't want, then I encourage you to order this program now. You'd really be amazed how a few simple tweaks can change your marketplace positioning significantly. I've seen this happen literally hundreds of times. And oftentimes, this transformation in your monthly cash flow that results is what allows you to comfortably put your kids through college or take that much needed vacation without having to hesitate, without having to worry about, can we afford this right now? So if you're finally ready to start answering these questions, and if you're finally ready to start feeling better about yourself and ready to create maximum leverage with your business, then order this program now. If you're still not convinced, let me share some comments on this program with you from other people who've ordered it. This is Matt Jones out of Queensland, Australia. And Matthew said, even if you only read one part of this book, make sure it's chapter 14, The Incredible Power of Your Back End. This chapter alone brought me in a little over $39,000 in less than 4 weeks. Dwight Miller from New Jersey. If you want real advice on how to create a real business that provides a continuous stream of predictable income for you and your family, then buy this program. It'll be the best investment of your life. Christian Godfroy from Switzerland. Last year, using just 2 of Craig's strategies, I pulled in $304,044.82 in 7 days alone. At 90% profit, I'm forever grateful to him for sharing these strategies which are now yours for the taking. He's a very experienced marketer, this guy. Bill Parliament out of Pennsylvania. The techniques and how to make maximum money with minimum customers have allowed me to walk away from my full-time job and transform my part-time freelance business into a thriving career. And Angel Suarez out of Palm Bay, Florida. Nobody else is talking about the things you do. Nobody else is laying out a step-by-step action plan for conceptualizing, creating, and starting a profitable business. A business that makes you the most amount of money with the least amount of resources. By the way, I really enjoyed getting to know you. Thanks for being honest, and thanks for delivering on your promise. Well, there you have it. These are from newbies, people who've been in business for a while, and people who are very seasoned in business. Hey, listen, I had a great time on this webinar, and judging from the number of questions you guys sent in, it seems like you did too. So I just want to let you know, if you sent in questions and I didn't get to them, I'm going to be going over them today and tomorrow. And if I didn't answer your question on the webinar, I'll personally email you a response. Okay? One more thing, almost forgot, and it's important. I mentioned to you earlier about the free audio program I was giving you just for listening, and I want to do this right now. So just click on the link right below, and you'll be taken directly to this program. I want to thank you for listening to the webinar, and I'll look forward to speaking with you personally one-on-one on your strategy session call. If you have any questions at all you have to do is contact my office. The phone number is right here. It's 813-909-2214. I'll say that again. You could write it down, 813-909-2214. Or you could email my assistant, Anne, and her email address is Anne, A-N-N-E, at kingofcopy.com. That's Anne with an E, at kingofcopy.com. Hey, get started now, and it was great talking with you. Thank you very much for listening.